You're listening to Little Rockers Radio, and today we are talking to Studio 10 host and relatively new mum to Paul, Sarah Harris. Hi Sarah, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you're on the cover of the current issue of Mother and Baby magazine. The photos are just gorgeous. How much fun was doing the shoot with Paul?
Do you know what? It was heaps of fun. They say never work with kids and animals. So I was a little bit apprehensive going into it because he was actually 5 months old when we did that photo shoot. So I was a little bit apprehensive as to how he would behave because, they lose it so quickly, the poor little things, they don't know what's going on. But the team was just brilliant. They got in really quickly. They got the shots done. They had a kind of a stylist working with Paul on his wardrobe. A brilliant photographer who just kind of worked around us and was incredibly patient with us. Everyone was really lovely and we actually had a ball, and I love the photos. These photos of him are just so adorable. I can't wait to whip them out of his 21st birthday party.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you get to do this amazing photo shoot and then you get these beautiful photos at the end that you get to hold on to and treasure. It's really nice.
Yeah, and he was super cool. I mean, he had to have a little bit of a lie down in the middle of the shoot for about 45 minutes, a bit of a feed and a sleep, but then he was back. So it's quite funny that a little boy that weighs less than 10 kilos can hold up a shoot for an hour. But it was just it was a great experience, and the photos. Gee, we're just so lucky to have them.
In the article in Mother and Baby, you talk about the scrutiny that you faced when you were pregnant and now how since Paul has been born, how your perspective changes with things like aesthetics, etc., fading into the background.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little more about this?
Yeah, sure. It's funny because I put on a lot of weight when I was pregnant. The day I went into hospital, I was actually 95 kilos, so 25 kilos heavier than I first started. And that was really confronting, especially being in TV, where, so much pressure. And look, it's not overt pressure, but there is a pressure to look a certain way and that type of thing. And I think on top of, just being a woman and sort of having to live up to these kind of unrealistic ideals of what your body should look like. So I had always had a kind of a fraught relationship with my body anyway, and then to put on all this weight. But I tell you, after going in and giving birth to this beautiful little boy and seeing what my body can actually do and what the female body is capable of, it just put everything into perspective. Because I kind of went, well, actually, you know what? It doesn't matter how big my bum is. What matters is if I'm strong. If I can lift my baby, if I can run around after him. That's the sort of stuff that matters. Not, can I squeeze back into those size 8 skinny jeans of mine, which 7.5 months later, let me tell you, I still can't. I think it's given me a whole new respect for, for the body and the female body and what it can do. I mean, I fed my little boy for, 6.5 months. I pushed him out, I run around after him. I have to be, fit and well and able to do all that sort of stuff. And I think it was a good wake-up call for me because I think as women we tend to be really hard on ourselves and kind of, I know that I've got this internal bully in my head that sort of, says the most horrible things to me. And, it's about silencing that inner bully and the inner critic. And yeah, I think that's why when some pretty unflattering photos came out of me when I was pregnant, I think it was in the Daily Mail website, that's why I kind of took a bit of a stand because I was like, you know what, I've already got someone in my head bullying me about my weight and everything else. I'm not going to let, you numbskulls do it as well. I'm going to take a stand for not just me, but for all the other women out there who, have had weight struggles, because as much as you try to push against it and you sort of think, oh, look, it doesn't bother me. It can hurt sometimes. And you have to be reminded that, it is for a greater good, and you're growing a human. There's more important things in life, and you know what, your body will get back there eventually.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also about allowing yourself to take that time too, isn't it? Not just being physically strong, but also being mentally strong, which is so much easier to say than
Yeah.
it is to do.
Well, when you've got hormones racing around your body and, you kind of up one minute and down the next, it's really hard to be rational and to look at things from a kind of an outside perspective. But, look, I think, all women, we've just got to look after each other, not be so judgmental of each other, and just give ourselves a bit of a break, We've got too many other people in the world looking to bring you down. We shouldn't be doing it to ourselves.
Yes, well said. Now, you also mentioned, and I resonate with this 1000%, as I'm sure do all mums, the worry that comes with from the second that your child is born,
Oh, I
which is not
know.
something that we necessarily expect. What else has taken you by surprise since you became a mum?
Look, definitely. I mean, you talk about worry. I mean, what else has taken me by surprise as well is that when people warn you when you have a baby that you're never going to know. It's completely different love. It's all consuming. It's all encompassing, and it does. It just completely overtakes you, which is wonderful, but what it does kind of remind you of, and look, I'm in the news business, so, I see the other side of the coin. I see, little kids that haven't had that good start in life, and they haven't had someone to protect them and love them and nurture them. And what's really taken me by surprise is that I'll be reading the newspaper now, and I'll read about another child that's been hurt or injured or abused or whatever, and I'll cry. And
Yes.
it's because you think, gosh, like Paul gets so much love, and he has these parents that just dote on him. What about the other little buds out there that don't have that? And that really gets to me. And it's funny, I've been doing this job for a long time now, sort of coming up to the 20-year mark. And I guess before I had children of my own, before I had a child of my own, I would just kind of gloss over those stories. Of course, I sort of tug at the heartstrings, but now I can't get it out of my mind. And yeah, it's something that stays with you. So I think that whole idea of considering yourself, there is not a day that goes by where I don't say, I feel so grateful that, my son is healthy, is happy, and, that he is safe. And your heart just can't help break for those other kids who are having a really rough time at it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know. I become a blubbering mess every time I turn on the news or watch the TV
Yeah.
or open the paper, read a magazine. And I think that most mums really do feel the same way.
Yeah, well, I remember Jessica Rose used to say to me, she's like, I can't read it, I can't talk about it. We shouldn't be talking about this. I can't understand it, and I didn't understand it at the time. I thought, but this is, it's an important topic to talk about, whatever. And now I completely get it. I can just completely understand where she's coming from. Yeah, that's been fun. And something else that's really struck me as well is that I didn't realise you would grieve the kind of every stage that your baby grows up. For example, the newborn phase is over so quickly. One day they're these squeaky, squirmy, squishy little, newborn babies, and the next day they're wide awake, and you're like, oh, he's never going to be that little ever again, And I was looking back at some videos that, I had on my iPhone only yesterday with my husband, and he had this terrible milk rash on his cheeks, and he had this baby pimples all over his face, but he was so cute and so tiny, and he had these tiny little nappies on. I went, he's never going to be that small ever again. My husband's gone, well, this is why we should have more of them. We should go again. I'm like, oh my God, let me catch my breath first. But that was a real shock that, you kind of, because sometimes you do find yourself in the middle of things going, oh, I wish I could get through this stage.
Yes.
But you can't wish it away because You never get it back. You never get it back.
That's so true, isn't it? That's actually one of the questions I had down. Everyone says to enjoy the time as it flies by, which can be really hard when you're right in the thick of it, that sort of first 6, 8,
When
10
it's a
weeks.
blur.
And I know now, I look back, my children are 7 and 9, but it really does fly by. Can you believe that you're only 4 months away from Paul's very first birthday?
I know. I just had out. I kid you not, the Women's Weekly vintage birthday cake book. I'm going to try and cook a cake. I've never baked before, but I'm going to try and bake a cake for his first birthday. It's funny, but I was told this beautiful quote when I first had Paul, and it was the days are long, but the years are short. And it's so true. And I did try to keep that at the forefront of my mind. I mean, there were certainly days where I was just completely losing it, and where I hadn't had a shower for a couple of days and he wouldn't settle. And he had this really bad wind problem for about 10 weeks, where he'd just like squirm up in pain every time I fed him, and I just couldn't work out what it was. It wasn't reflux. He was just a really gassy kind of baby. And, it was hard to be zen and remember that quote. But, sometimes you've got to be tough with yourself and just go, look, just be in the moment, because the next stage will come along and you'll regret kind of wishing away the present. So, yeah, try and keep it in your mind if you can.
Now, you're back at work, so you're juggling work as well as being mum. How do you find the balance? Or I always ask, is there even such a thing as finding balance?
Do you know what? Like, first of all, look, I'm in a great job, and, I work, I'm up early, but I finish kind of early-ish afternoon. So, what I'm doing, isn't the hardest job in the world. I mean, I certainly take my hat off to the women out there who are doing, huge days, working shift work. I mean, hats off to those women, because they deserve a bloody medal. We are basically putting our money into a babysitter that comes for the first half of the day. I spoke to... when I first just before I had Paul, I said to Edwina McCann, who is the editor of Vogue magazine, I said to her, what advice would you give me going back to work? And she said, go back to work and throw your money into childcare. And it sucks because you're going to come out behind a lot of the time, but it's the only way to keep your hand in your career if that's what you want. If you decide you want to keep your job going, you need to take the hit. It's not fair. It's completely unfair that in 2016, childcare is so prohibitively expensive. But if you can do it, throw your money into childcare and keep your hand in your career, because it's not going to last. Expensive childcare doesn't last forever. It's not for the rest of their lives. It's a couple of years where you have to take the hit, but it pays off. It's like an investment in your career. So that's what I kind of do. That's how I balance it. We have a brilliant babysitter who comes at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I leave before 6, and my husband does that couple of hours in the morning. He has his own business. So then when the babysitter gets here, he goes to work, and then I come home mid-afternoon and take over and do kind of walks in the afternoon, bath time, dinner time, bedtime, that sort of stuff. So it's a bit of a juggle, but it's just, as I said, it's not going to be this way forever, and you just kind of got to put your head down and kind of work hard now to hopefully, in a couple of years you can lift your head back up and breathe. But like, we're not, we're just like any other family trying to pay our mortgage. We're not going on fancy holidays. We don't buy new clothes. We're pretty much eating baked beans for dinner. But, you just got to suck it up and do it like every other family out there. Yeah, that's how. I mean, in terms of balance though, I mean, I do make sure that I take Paul for a walk in the pram. I mean, I think it's really good for my headspace as well. I think it's really easy to get cooped up and, if you get into the kind of on the hamster wheel of going to work, coming home, being a mum, going through the motions, you do kind of get a bit stale. So it is good to get out there, get some fresh air, and to, have some new time. I just whack on a bit of a podcast and listen to the news or that type of thing, some good interviews from overseas. And, yeah, so that's how I kind of keep my balance.
Yeah, and balance is different for everyone, isn't it? I mean, I went back to work when when my kids were 6 months, because that was my balance, and that was also my escape. So it is different for everyone.
Oh, that's funny because Jessica Rose said the same. And she says like going to work is like having a break for her, and I must say that's the same. Like it is intense. My job, because I get in there and I'm kind of writing scripts, and I don't stop for 6 hours, but it is, it's very intense for kind of a short amount of time. But it is nice to be able to use the bathroom on your own, get hair and makeup done, all that sort of stuff. But it's just, I mean, it's about sort of little moments for yourself, and for me, I can kind of, push the pram around the neighbourhood and, get to listen to some news podcasts, and for me, that means balance.
Yeah, now I'm conscious of time, so everyone who's listening can find out more about your journey into motherhood in the current issue of Mother and Baby magazine. All the details are on our site at www.littlerockersradio.com.au. Thanks so much for joining us today, Sarah. It's been great to chat to you.
Oh, no, thanks for having me. Now, I understand that you guys are doing some baby meditation soon. Is that right?
We are, yes. We're actually doing, it's called Happy Smile Little Meditations, which we launched just last week with Lynette Bolton.
I'm going to get on that and tell all my friends. It's been great chatting.
That was Sarah Harris, host of Studio 10 and, more importantly, mum to little Paul, here on Little Rockers Radio. Thanks for listening.